here's your host, John, with more classic movie reviews.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. Today's movie is 1, 2, 3, 1961, starring the great James Cagney. I'm going to have to say right off the bat that this may be the greatest product placement movie of all times. It's a fun little movie with former Nazis, communists, and God forbid, capitalists. This movie wasn't quite Cagney's last role, as he showed up in Ragtime 1981.
The actors.
The great James Cagney played the lead role of C.R. McNamara. The word great is thrown around a lot, but with this guy, it's true. Cagney was a real tough guy and a song and dance man as well. Cagney, of course, was born in New York City in 1899.
I'm walking here!
After high school, he attended Columbia University, but left school upon his father's death in the 1918 flu pandemic. Cagney had a variety of jobs, such as bellhop and night doorman. He learned to tap dance, was a good street brawler, and was a good amateur boxer. His mother encouraged his boxing but refused to let him turn pro. Cagney, who began working behind the scenes in theater, was called one night to replace his sick brother and thus began his acting career. He began working on Broadway and in vaudeville. In 1924, he and his wife moved to California, but they had no luck and headed back to New York. Cagney was in a play titled Maggie the Magnificent with actress Joan Blondell. Al Jolson bought the rights for the film, but insisted that Cagney and Blondell be given their roles. The film came out under the title Sinner's Holiday, 1930, and resulted in Cagney signing a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers. Cagney made 4 more movies before his breakout role in The Public Enemy, 1931, a classic gangster film. The studio continued this theme, casting Cagney with Edward G. Robinson in G-Men, 1934. A champion of actors' equity, he was involved in the formation of the Screen Actors Guild in 1933. In Footlight Parade, 1933, Cagney was able to show his substantial dancing ability. In Here Comes the Navy, 1934, he met his lifelong friend, Pat O'Brien. This movie is fascinating as it was partially shot on the USS Arizona and shows some great views of this iconic ship. Cagney was involved in fierce contract negotiations during his entire time at Warner Brothers. In 1936, he began making independent films, but most were nothing to speak about. Cagney eventually won a lawsuit and returned to Warner's. Now back at Warner's, Cagney began to make movies of different genres. But back in the gangster role, in Angels with Dirty Faces 1938, he played Rocky Sullivan, a condemned criminal that a friendly priest begs to turn yellow before his execution so young boys won't idolize the lawbreaker. Cagney was accused of being a communist sympathizer in 1934 and again in 1940. Cagney was cleared by U.S. Representative Martin Dies, Jr. of the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. Cagney's last gangster role for a time was The Roaring Twenties, 1939, with Humphrey Bogart. In December 1941, Cagney began working on Yankee Doodle Dandy, 1942, playing the lead role of song and dance man George M. Cohan. Cagney received the Best Actor Oscar for this film. In 1942, Cagney formed an independent studio through United Artists. That same year, he was elected president of SAG. He continued to raise money for the war and perform in USO shows. Following a series of poor-performing movies, Cagney returned to Warner Brothers. Right off the bat, Cagney turned in one of his most memorable roles in White Heat 1949. He made other films, but the next one of importance to me is Mr. Roberts 1955. This film was directed by John Ford. In 1955, Cagney was cast on the Western film Tribute to a Bad Man for MGM. They offered him These Wilder Years 1956 with Barbara Stanwyck. In 1956, Cagney played Lon Chaney Sr. in Man of a Thousand Faces 1957. Later in 1957, Cagney tried directing, but he did not care for the work. Another film from this later period was Shake Hands with the Devil, 1959, where Cagney played an Irish Republican Army commander. In 1960, Cagney took on the role of Admiral William F. Bull Halsey in The Gallant Hours, 1960, the story of the Guadalcanal campaign in the Pacific Theater during World War II. Of course, in his next-to-last movie, Cagney showed what a masterful talent he was with the comedy caper 1, 2, 3, 1961. Cagney retired until 1986, turning down roles in My Fair Lady, 1964, and The Godfather, 1972. Suffering from poor eyesight due to diabetes, Cagney rarely appeared in public. In 1974, Cagney appeared at the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Awards. Charlton Heston said of Cagney that he was, quote, one of the most significant figures of a generation when American films were dominant. Cagney, the most American of actors, somehow communicated eloquently to audiences all over the world, and to actors as well, unquote. In his acceptance speech, Cagney said to impressionist Frank Gorshin, "Oh, Frankie, just in passing, I never said, you dirty rat. What I actually did say was, Judy, Judy, Judy." This was a joking reference to an oft-attributed misquote of Cary Grant's. Following a stroke and being unable to pursue his hobbies, Cagney was encouraged by his wife and Zimmerman, his caregiver, to take a role. This role turned out to be a small but very important role in Ragtime, 1981. Cagney died at his farm in Stanfordville, New York in 1986 of a heart attack. He was 86 years old. One of my favorite Cagney quotes on the subject of hard times and work, he said, "It was good for me. I feel sorry for the kid who has too cushy a time of it. Suddenly he has to come face to face with the realities of life without any mama or papa to do his thinking for him." Horst Buchholz played the Otto Ludwig Piffel, communist-turned-capitalist. Horst was born in Berlin, Germany in 1933, and they never heard of the Nazis. Horst was placed in a foster home in Czechoslovakia during World War II. Back in Berlin, he moved to the West Sector and began acting on the stage. In 1952, he moved into German films and became a well-established actor. He then went on to make one British film before securing his role in The Magnificent Seven, 1960. What? Horst began making national and international films. He turned down the role of Sharif Ali in Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, because he was already signed up to do 1, 2, 3, 1961. Although he continued to make great films, his career was never propelled to the next level. By the 70s and 80s, he was working mostly in television. He came back onto the radar with his role in Life is Beautiful, 1997. This film won Best Foreign Film and was nominated for Best Picture. Horst continued working until 2002. He died the next year of pneumonia. Pamela Tiffin played Wild Southern Belle Scarlett Hazeltine. Tiffin was born in Oklahoma in 1942. She became a model in New York. On a trip to California, she met Hal B. Wallace, and he gave the teen a role in Summer and Smoke, 1961. Tiffin's first performance was critically acclaimed, and director Billy Wilder liked her comedic skills, so he cast her in 1, 2, 3, 1961. She made more comedies in the early 60s before leaving for Italy. She worked in film over there until she retired in 1974 to raise a family. Arlene Francis played Phyllis McNamara, the neglected wife of C.R. McNamara. Francis was born in Boston in 1907. From an early age, she wanted to be an actress. Her movie debut was in Murders in the Rue Morgue, 1932, with Bela Lugosi, where he tied her to a cross to extract her blood. Francis made her Broadway debut in 1936. Francis also worked with Orson Welles' Mercury Theater productions. She got involved with TV game shows and was highly in demand from 1950 through 1970s. Francis died in 2001 at the age of 93. Leon Askin played the role of one of the Russian delegates, Perpetukhov. He is best known for playing General Burkhalter on Hogan's Heroes 1965-71. John Banner was used as the voice of Krauss and the Haberdasher. Banner is known for playing Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes, a comedy version of the character Sig Rubin played in Stalag 17, 1950. Sig Rubin was uncredited as the voice of Count von Droste Schattenberg. Rubin was covered in episode 76, House of Frankenstein, 1944.
Story.
The movie begins with American executive C.R. McNamara James Cagney, driving through a divided Cold War Berlin and talking about how hard the other side was to deal with.
Without any warning, the East German communists sealed off the border between East and West Berlin. I only mention this to show the kind of people we're dealing with. Real shifty.
When he pulls up to the building, it is revealed that he runs the West Berlin office of Coca-Cola. He dreams only of being sent to run the London office. At his office, most of the male workers seem to be SS men in hiding.
Can't they get it through their Prussian heads? They're living in a democracy now.
That is the trouble. In the old days, if I ordered them to sit, they would sit. Now, with the democracy, they do what they want. What they want is to stand.
This includes his executive assistant, Schlemmer, Hans Lothar, who can't stop clicking his heels together when he says yes.
That old Gestapo training, huh?
Please, Mr. McNamara, you must not say that. It is not true.
Just between us, Schlemmer, what did you do during the war?
I was in the Untergrund, the underground.
Resistance fighter?
No, motorman in the underground, you know, the subway.
Of course, you're anti-Nazi and you never liked Adolf.
Adolf who?
McNamara also has a lovely secretary/girlfriend, Fräulein Ingeborg, Lieselette Puller.
Guten Morgen, Herr McNamara.
And a good morning to you, Fräulein Ingeborg.
It is not Fraulein, it is Fräulein, with an umlaut.
I'll say.
That is in addition to Mrs. McNamara, Arlene Francis, and 2 children. McNamara dictates to his secretary that he is meeting with the communists to try and get coke sold on the other side of the Iron Curtain. The 3 communists, Mishkin, Propetchikov, and Bordenko, immediately take notice of Fräulein Ingeborg. They reach an agreement, but the delegation wants Fräulein Ingeborg to deliver the contracts.
While they're putting Uncle Sam in cuckoo clocks, we will put Soviet cosmonaut on moon.
Okay, so you guys may be the first to shoot a man to the moon, but if he wants a coke on the way, you'll have to come to us.
McNamara explains to Schlemmer how he got in the doghouse with the company and was sent to South America and is now working his way back up the line to the London job. He gets a call from his boss, Hazeltine, in Atlanta, saying that his sweet 17-year-old daughter is coming to Berlin for a couple of weeks and McNamara and family need to watch after her. This forces Mrs. McNamara to cancel her trip, and he has to cancel his plans with Fräulein Ingeborg. Scarlett Hazeltine, Pamela Tiffin, arrives, and she is a real hussy. Kind of like Scarlett O'Hara cubed.
Hi there! How was your flight? Just marvelous. The boys let me bust Dusseldorf.
Time passes, and it seems Scarlett has stayed with the family for 2 months. McNamara's driver didn't show up. Fräulein Ingeborg threatens to quit because he hasn't been giving her any time. Mr. Hazeltine calls from Atlanta to say he is coming to Berlin to pick up his daughter. Mrs. McNamara calls to say that Scarlett is missing. The driver comes in and says he has been dropping her every night at the Brandenburg Gate, East Berlin, and picking her up in the morning. This morning she was a no-show. Scarlett shows up at the office and says she has been seeing a boy on the eastern side for about 6 weeks.
What were you doing in East Berlin?
You mean last night?
I mean all those nights.
You see, there's this boy over there. Wow!
Scarlett calls Otto Ludwig Piffel, Horst Buchholz, up and announces that they are married. He's a dirty slob and a hardcore communist.
You married a communist?
He's not a communist, he's a Republican. Comes from the Republic of East Germany.
The 2 men have a political debate in the office. Finally, Otto and Scarlett tell that they are leaving for the USSR that night. That's Russia to you people now. Mrs. McNamara calls and finds out what is going on. Scarlett goes home to get her clothes while McNamara and Schlemmer put things on Otto's motorcycle that will get him arrested by the East Germans. Otto is arrested with a Ruski Go-Home balloon and a cuckoo clock that plays Yankee Doodle Dandy. Mrs. McNamara happily gets Scarlett ready to go. Mr. McNamara comes home happily and says Otto has been arrested. He plans on getting the marriage annulled. Scarlett passes out and they call a doctor. The doctor announces that Scarlett is pregnant. Mrs. McNamara says she is ready to go back to the United States. She calls her husband out about his girlfriends. She also insists that he get Otto out of jail. McNamara, Schlemmer, and Fräulein Ingeborg head to the East German side. Ingeborg has on a new polka dot dress and a hat that McNamara bought her. They meet the 3 Russian trade commissioners and agree to trade as secretary for the release of Otto. Ingeborg dances on the table while the men negotiate. They make the deal at sunup. The East Germans break Otto by playing Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini over and over. The Russians spring Otto just after he confesses to being a spy. They dress slimmer in the polka dot dress, and Otto, Ingeborg, and McNamara escape with the Russians in pursuit. Back at the Coca-Cola building, McNamara has 12 hours to turn Otto into an acceptable capitalist son for the Hazeltine.
We're going to turn this crumb bomb into a perfect son-in-law. And we've got exactly 3 hours and 2 minutes to do it in.
Otto finds out that he has confessed to being a spy. Otto finally accepts that he has to take the conversion. In record time, they convert Otto into a capitalist with a royal bloodline. Cagney is amazing as he barks out orders during the transformation.
Ready?
Always ready.
First, call Reinhardt and Reinhardt Custom Tailors and have them send up everything they've got in their shop. Single-breasted, 3-button, narrow lapels, medium-graded, dark blue, size 39 regular. Next, call Plesky the haberdasher. I want to see some shirts. Broadcloth, plain tab collar, size 15.5, 34. Shorts, nylon or cotton, size 32. Socks, French lisle, dark tone, size 11.5. Ties, not too wide, not too narrow, not too fancy. Also pajamas, handkerchiefs, cufflinks, suspenders, etc., etc.
McNamara's wife comes in and announces she is leaving him. Mrs. McNamara runs into Ingeborg as she is leaving the office. When Mr. McNamara tries to teach Otto table manners, he threatens to smash a grapefruit into his face like the scene from Public Enemy 1931. They find a royal that is a bathroom attendant, Count von Dreusch-Schattenberg, who is voiced by Sig Ruman.
Just because I'm reduced to earning my living in a washroom does not mean that I'm willing to peddle the honor and dignity of my family name. The von Droste-Schattenboys date back to the Second Crusade. We have one of the oldest bloodlines in Europe and one of the most inbred. Make it 10,000 bucks. For an additional 500 marks, I will include the family crest.
What is it, 2 cakes of soap and a field of paper towels?
A porcupine rampant on a field of fleur-de-lis. You may also have a photograph of the Schattenburg Castle, unfortunately destroyed during the war.
American Air Force?
Oh, Turkish cavalry, 1683.
3 military police come in, and one is played by Red Button. They are looking for a woman with Yankee Go Home tattooed on her breast. Then, Red Buttons does a Cagney impression before he leaves. He then finds the dress and sees the 2 balloons that Swimmer used when he wore the dress. Otto wows his new in-laws.
I want you to meet my husband, Otto.
The Count von Droste-Schattenburg.
Count von what?
This is my mother, your Highness.
Please, not in the immediate family.
How is the situation here in Berlin?
It shouldn't happen to a dog. I mean, it's a draw. Actually, the situation is hopeless, but not serious. Now, Dad, there are a few ideas I'd like to kick around with you. Now, we must look beyond the 6-pack. Why not a 9-pack? Or 12-pack?
And he gets the London job. McNamara is given a job in Atlanta.
You're going all the way to the top now. There's an opening in the Home Office, Vice President in charge of procurement. And it is all yours.
Why are you so good to me?
I know you must be dying to get back to Atlanta.
Dying is right.
He stops his wife and kids before they board another plane. He buys them a Coke, and the last bottle that comes out is a Pepsi. His wife takes him back. 2 important quotes. Quote, Billy Wilder's film is a crackling, mile-a-minute farce taking satiric scatter shots at Coca-Cola, the Cold War. The film is set in the months just before the erection of the Berlin Wall. Russian red tape, communist and capitalist hypocrisy, Southern bigotry, the German war guilt, rock music, and even Cagney's own movie images. Not all of the gags are in the best of taste, and most of the one-liners have dated rather badly. But Cagney's mesmerizing performance holds the whole affair together, unquote. This is a quote from Cagney. I never had the slightest difficulty with a fellow actor, not until 1, 2, 3. In that picture, Horst Buchholz tried all sorts of scene-stealing didos. I came close to knocking him on his ass, unquote.
Here's the world-famous short summary.
Coke or Pepsi, capitalist or communist. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes and give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show notes to my site. Beware the Moors.